Hello everybody, Joel Logan with the Hole in the Ground Terrain. I want to welcome you to the second video in our tutorial series on how to build cavern/mines. The first video was about gathering the tools, supplies, and resources you would need to build these. So in this video we're jumping straight in, and we're going to start with some simple straight/runner pieces is what I call them, which are designed to fill up a gaming table and to go around the edge. So the first thing you need to do is gather up your foam. Now I've gathered up some 2-inch foam. This is 2 inches thick. Notice I mixed some blue and pink foam. It's okay to mix it as long as it's the same height. Now if all you've got is 1.5 inch, make sure that's all you use each time. So if you've gathered your 2-inch foam together, get you some nice long pieces, maybe at least 2 feet long or more. We're going to use about this much of them, and then the taller ones are going to be a little skinnier. And remember, we can use this multiple times. So if you've gathered up some 2-inch foam, and that's maybe 2 foot wide or more, a couple little scrap pieces, then you've completed the first step. Now one thing I will point out, I'd like you to find some pieces that are from along the edge of the board. Now as you can imagine, I have a gigantic pile of scrap foam because I've built a lot of projects. If you don't, you may be starting with the original board, but see if you can find some pieces from along the edge. If all you have is interior foam that's misshapen, that's okay, but you're going to have to cut a straight edge at least to start with. But if you've got some that already has a straight side to it, it's going to save you a little bit of work. So if you've got your foam, you've completed step 1, we're going to move on to step 2. Alright everybody, I've got some foam laid out on the table. So you got to give a lot of thought to the very first piece you're going to cut, because that's going to determine the overall size. Now the bottom layer is going to always be the largest. So first thing I'm going to do is take a black magic marker here, and let's mark out just a rough piece. Like I said, this is going to be what I call a straight runner piece for the table. And now I'm planning out a ledge for my miniatures to stand on. And as long as it comes to a point, it's going to line up good with other pieces. So I've marked out this first bottom piece, and I'm going to cut it out. So let's pause the video. Alright, so I've cut this piece out with my Ryobi scroll saw. And you could have used a hot wire foam cutter, a number of things to cut your foam. So I've cut this out. Next thing I'm going to do is trace this piece onto this other side. Now I've got another flat edge I can use here, which is going to save me some time. But I need to point something out to you. So let's trace it first, then I'll make my point. Alright, so I just traced this out, but this is not what I'm going to cut. I'm wanting to form a ledge for my miniatures to stand on. So my idea is the second and third layer. This is the second. This is the first. The second and third will be identical on this. So I'm going to go in like this and draw a smaller ledge. The idea is my miniatures can be placed on here. So I'm going to go ahead and cut this out, then we'll work on the third piece. Alright everybody, so hopefully you can see my second piece here is cut out, and it's going to stack on top here. Now remember, we're going for a total of 6 inches in height on this piece. So what I'm going to do next, you see you got a good ledge here for miniatures. What I'm going to do next is trace the second piece on yet another piece of scrap foam that I've got. And we're going to do the third. Now this doesn't have to be perfect. We're going to do some shaping and touch up before we get through with this. But I am going to want to try to cut this as close as I can because all of this will assemble together. And the idea here is for layers 2 and 3 to match up fairly close. It doesn't have to be perfect because we're dealing with rock or stone. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and cut out piece number 3, and we'll be right back. Alright, piece 3 is cut, so let's see what all this looks like together. Now, I don't expect it to be perfect. Let's see if I cut it anywhere close. It's looking pretty good here. Alright, so hopefully you can imagine what this is going to look like. Miniatures here, a little ledge to run along, and it gives it some height and illusion. The thing you're going to have to remember what this is going to look like when it's finished is, you see this is my table here. This is going to run along the edge of your gaming table and give the illusion of depth and reality and form a realistic place that you're going to be having your game in. So what we're going to do, and due to the magic of editing, this will all happen quickly. Let's go ahead and glue this together. Now, like I've told you before, I use Aleene's tacky glue. You can buy other brands. This one is fairly cheap and common. You can find it at Walmart and other places. And this is going to take a while to dry. It's getting pretty late tonight, so I'm going to let this dry overnight and start the tutorial video back tomorrow. So let's get us some glue on here. Hopefully you can see most of what I'm doing here. Now, foam does not hold together just by glue itself. I guess you could, but what works really good are toothpicks. I picked up a bunch of these earlier in the year when a store was closing. Now there's several ways to do it. Of course, I could poke it through the bottom, but let's try first. I'm just going to stack this on top here. Almost every foam project I built has toothpicks or bamboo skewers in it. Toothpicks generally work pretty good because they're small. And you see, pulling on that pretty good. It's on there pretty well. Let's go ahead and do the next one. I'm not going too berserk with the glue, but I want to use a good bit. You'd be surprised how well this will hold up once it's dried. So maybe a toothpick here, another down here to hold it. And let's see if I can put this on like I had it a minute ago. There we go. It's looking pretty good. Now this doesn't have to be perfect. We're going to do some touch-up work on it. We're going to do some filling later on in the video. But I'm going to let this dry overnight before I fool with it anymore. And we're going to do a whole lot more to it. So let's let this dry, and through the magic of editing, we'll start back here in just a second. Alright everybody, this is dried overnight, and the next thing I want to do, if you notice my edges are a little bit uneven, I'm going to take one of my hot wire tools here, my sculpting tool, and I'm going to use this just to smooth this out, give it a little cleaner look. Now, I'm sure there's tons of tutorials on the sculpting tool, but when you can sculpt multiple layers of foam, it almost like it kind of melts and fuses it together. So very carefully not to take too much length off. I'm going to go ahead and work on this corner to even it up here. Now notice I am doing my best here to go through multiple pieces. I'm going to try to go slow. Remember, you want to let the wire do the cutting. You don't want to pull real hard on it. On this tool especially, you'll break the wires very easily. So you see, that's how it looks a whole lot more solid to me and even. And it's, remember, this is a rock formation. So you actually don't want it to be perfect See if we can go down this one real quick. Alright, that's not too bad right there. Remember, our goal is for this to line up fairly decent with other pieces on the table too, so let me work on this piece just a little bit here. Alright, so I'm pretty happy with the way that looks right there. Let's take a look at it. It's one side there. Other side. Let's see what the back's looking like. Now you notice a little bit uneven here. Okay, so let's talk about our next step here before we actually move on to it. I want to seal in some of the gaps. There's two ways we're going to do it. And so I'm going to stop the camera here for a second. And I'm going to mix up some dental plaster. I use a brand called Excalibur. But you can also buy Quikrete concrete, like Home Depot or Lowe's or somewhere. Concrete that sets up pretty quick. If you want to use concrete, I like dental plaster, but I realize the average person can't just run out and buy that. You have to special order it. Or you can use some spackle or painter's putty. Spackle may work a little better, what you would use to do sheetrock drywall work. So let's take a pause here, let's mix some up, and let's rub in our cracks and fill them in a little bit. Alright everybody, so I've mixed up a little bit of dental plaster. Like I said, there's all kind of filler type materials you can use. Hopefully you can see this here. This is what I typically pour a lot of my Herstart stuff out of. And we'll start on the back. Now, this is going to do several things. We're going to fill in some of the cracks and seams, but this also strengthens the model, helps form the pieces together, and it gives it some weight. As you know, foam is extremely lightweight, and this gives it a little bit of weight too on the gaming table, so it doesn't flounder and flop around. So using just my spoon, I'm going to get it started and get some on here. And this helps cover up a lot of imperfections, and in the end, you would never know we put this on here because it's going to blend in with everything. Now, I should probably caution you, you should probably wear gloves. Of course, I never do. I'm sure somebody's going to post on here there's something bad in here that's going to hurt you. But I just typically use my fingers because you can feel it and smooth it out. But what I try to do is kind of smooth it in. Fill in all of our cracks and seams. And I'll typically rub it up and down a little bit to kind of make it blend in. Because if you just pull it all straight, that's going to look kind of funny. But once you fill in the crack fairly decent, I typically go back and kind of rub in some patterns. Try to make it look like some stone, rock. And this will look pretty good once it dries. And this stuff actually dries very quickly, so I don't have a lot of time to dilly-dally, if you know what I mean. Alright, so this isn't actually too bad right there. You gotta remember, once this dries, we're gonna primer it, dry brush it up, and with all this texture in it, man, it's gonna look really, really good. Like I said, you may want to get you a little cheap pair of like those medical gloves or whatever if you're worried about getting this on you. It comes off pretty good. It's not too bad. Alright, so we've got the back looking halfway decent, and it's already, believe it or not, drying up pretty good. But we want to go to the front, and we're going to do something special with this bottom seam. But this one here we want to do some work on. So let's go ahead and get something in. And I'm being pretty generous on here. From experience doing this a lot, the dental plaster looks pretty good, gives it a lot of neat texture. So don't feel too bad about glopping it on, because we're going to smooth it out. Okay, so we've got a good bit in there. So let's try to fill it in a little bit. You see, we got plenty to work with here. The main thing is we want to, as much as possible, try not to have that straight line going across, because it just doesn't look natural in a rock formation. And it's alright if it shows a little bit, but we just don't want a solid straight line going across. So let's do some more smoothing here. Alright guys, dry time on this is typically about 15 to 20 minutes. So I'm going to pause the camera, let this dry, and then we're going to work here on that last seam. I'm going to show you what I was talking about in the first video. We're going to get out some cat litter, and we're going to do just a little bit along that edge here in a minute. So let's go ahead and pause the camera and we'll be right back. Alright guys, I've let this dry a good bit, and let's take a look at it. It's not perfect. You can still see a little bit of a line, but the majority of it's covered up. We've added some really nice texture to it. Look at the back. Boy, that looks good. And the next step we're going to do is we're going to add the illusion of some rubble and some loose stone here to cover this seam up. Now, I could have covered it in, but I like to put this on here because it makes it look good. So this is the stage where we're going to use the cat litter. So I'm going to put a good bit of glue. Once again, I got the Aleene's tacky glue along the seam. And this serves several purposes, of course, to cover the seam. But it looks really good. So I'm going to get a lot of glue on here. Alright, I think we got enough glue maybe to get started here, putting out some flocking. Now this can be a little messy, so you're going to get some of the litter. What I do is I just take a pinch full, drop it in. Now remember, not all this is going to stay by any means. What I usually do, and what I'll do in a minute, is I'll shake this over a trash can and let the pieces that's not going to stay go ahead and fall off. Now the only disadvantage to doing this is over time some of this may come off down the road and it'll leave a gray, blue, or pink spot that you may have to touch up with your brush later on. So don't be surprised if some of this comes off over time as you play mini games with your train. Okay, so I think you see that didn't take a lot. So I've got a little trash bag over here where you can see it. So I'm going to go ahead and let that come off, and you see a lot of it slid off. Okay, so let's see what we got here. Looking pretty good, I think. Alright, we're going to stop here, and the next step is going to be optional. So if you don't have the optional piece that you need for the next step, go ahead and move on to the next step of primer. But I'm going to stop the camera here and we'll start back with an optional step. Alright guys, so here's our optional step. Hurst Arts makes a mold. I think it's mold 85. I'm sure of the number. I think maybe it's called Dungeon Accessories. Has some really neat pieces. It's got some little cave pieces here that's meant to glue on. And the optional step is that we're going to put some of these Hurst Arts pieces on here. We're going to put some of these little Cavern pieces on there. And they also make some little crystals that we're going to embed in there that look really neat. So remember, this is optional. You don't have to do it. But I want to share with you the fact that I do use it. Now what I've been doing, guys, is I'm going to use my plunge cutter here, my hot wire foam cutter. And for the crystals, I've been kind of embedding them at an angle. I don't know if you can see what I'm doing too good. But I'm plunging in, kind of wallering out. That's the southern term, to waller. Some space. And I'm going to take this and I guess I should glue it a little bit. But you see how I'm kind of inserting this at an angle? Like it's poking out. And let me make a few other pieces here. I think I've got, let's maybe do one on the bottom here. Carve out a spot for one of these big ones. Poke down in here. Like it's coming out. If you can see that right there, what I've done. And I think I've got one more to put somewhere. Let's see, how about coming out right there? That looks like a good spot. Just picking some random spots here. That looks pretty nice. If you can see that there, right there. Alright. Now, sometimes I don't even glue these, but just as a precaution, I think I'm going to go back and glue these pieces in with a little bit of Aleene's tacky glue. So let's go ahead and do that. Sometimes I've got them in tight enough where I haven't had to use any glue. Right, got a little bit of glue on that one. Let's get some glue down in there. This is going to look really great in the next few steps as we get it painted up. And I usually try to do these crystals at a little bit of an angle. I don't like for them to be too straight. Kind of looks good if they're jotting out at weird angles. There we go. Now I've got some of these little pieces here. I'm going to just try to find a flat spot here. And just glue them in. Kind of as an illusion, they've got a flat piece on the back here. There we go, got one right there. It just kind of makes it stand out a little bit. And I may not use all these that I've pulled out, but gives you something else to break up the monotony. And to look good when you start painting it as well. Let's see, got that one right there. And maybe let's put one of these little ones in. Right here looks like a good spot. There we go. And guys, I think that's all I'm going to do as far as the optional pieces here. Let's take a look at what I've done here. Alright, so what I'm going to do next, I'm going to let this dry overnight since I just glued all this, and I'm going to come back tomorrow, primer it black, maybe before I go to work. But anyway, we're through with this for now. We'll move on to the next step, which is primering it. And if you don't have any H2O paint, that's what I'm going to use. We'll cover in the next step. You can always just use black acrylic paint. If you can't find, I know that stuff's hard to find. So anyway, let's move on. Hello everybody, we're going to go ahead and spray paint it up with some Krylon H2O. I've got a little thing here that turns my spray cans into a paint gun, so let's go ahead and spray it up some. Alright, let's let it dry up and then we'll start doing some painting on it. Alright everybody, you can see the piece primered black. The next step we're going to do is we're going to dry brush it a dark gray color. Now there's no right or wrong paint for this. Generally for terrain you don't want to use expensive Vallejo or Games Workshop paint. Here's some dark gray I got, I think from Walmart or somewhere. So find you a fairly dark gray. We're going to dry brush this. I'm not going to go through dry brushing that much. There's a million tutorials on that. So let's dry brush this thing dark gray and see what it looks like. Alright everybody, let's take a look at it after we've dry brushed it a dark gray color. Still a little bit wet. You can see all the nice texture here. Still got a little bit of blue showing. I'm going to hopefully fill that in before I get through. But you can't see it that much. But you see the great texture that the dental plaster did, of course. I believe if you use some light concrete, some Quikrete, or whatever filler, you're going to get some good texture like that. Alright, so the next step is going to be to dry brush a light gray. Now my favorite color is a color called Dolphin Gray. It's made by Apple Barrel, but anything you've got from any brand should be good. This color is a light gray, almost a white color, excuse me. So let's dry brush it up with this and see what it looks like. Alright, just dry brushed it a light gray color. If we hadn't put optional pieces in it, we would now seal it and be done with it. But if you remember earlier in the video, we put some crystals in here. Let's see how many we put. I'm counting 1, 2, 3 crystals. So what we're going to do next, I've got 2 colors pulled out. A metallic blue, that's one of my favorite, and a metallic red. And we're going to dry brush some of these crystals up real quick. And this gives it a pretty neat effect. Just kind of stands out against the blue, the gray. Gives it a little different color. We don't want to go overboard with this, just a little bit. So let's do this one blue. Now I'm going to kind of do a little bit of effect on the rock here, where some of the blue light is coming out on it. So if you can see that. And let's maybe do this one over here blue. Remember, we're just dry brushing, so you don't want to go too crazy. So let's kind of do a little starburst pattern out from it right there. And let me clean my brush a little bit. And we'll do this large one here red. See how that looks. And remember, I'm using some metallic colors. Metallic green would work good for this. I've got a metallic purple I use sometimes. But we're going to kind of just keep it simple on here. Let's see if we can get the red open. That shook up a little bit. And remember, with dry brushing, we don't want to use a whole lot of paint. Right, so let's see what this looks like. Right, so you can see the blue crystal there, a little bit of blue light dissipate now. Got the red and another little blue crystal there. Okay guys, so all that's left on this is I'm going to seal it with some Krylon shortcuts. Seal it, and we'll seal it up to protect it, and it'll be finished. So let me go ahead and seal it up. Alright everybody, I've let the sealant dry overnight, and this is the final part of the video to film it so you can see some final shots here. Now, some closing marks. Remember, this was a tutorial video, so we only built one of these. If you're building a board, you're going to be building a bunch of these to line the edge of your table. So remember, you want to have an assembly line. Some other thoughts is you could definitely build this bigger. The larger this is, the more stable it's going to be as far as pushing over, but you may want to come out to here some more. Build it wider. Play around with some different heights. It doesn't have to be 6 inches. You could build one 8 or 9 inches tall. But the idea of a runner piece is it's a fairly straight shape. You can have different ledges, and so remember, kind of get you an assembly line going. Get a bunch of these together. What I generally do if it's for a commission or something is I'll build everything first before I even think about primering it or painting it. I do it kind of all in stages, so I'll do the whole thing built all at once. So remember, play with some different heights. You may want a ledge this tall and a wall that tall. You may want it to come out here, be a lot bigger. Now some closing thoughts too. The next tutorial, we're going to go into building some corner pieces, and we're also going to look at how to build entrances and exits and tunnels, and some of the neat things you can do with that. We're going to carve out some tunnels so your miniatures have places to come in and leave from. So we're going to go over that and some cool tips and tricks with that, and how to build corner pieces. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this tutorial video. If you have, please let me know, and that really encourages me to work on more tutorial videos. So if you like this, let me know below. If you haven't subscribed already, please subscribe to the channel. That way you can see the latest things we're working on. But right now my plans are I'm going to start working on the next tutorial video in the next few weeks. I may have 1 or 2 more Christmas videos coming out too. So anyway, thanks and God bless. Thanks for watching the tutorial, and hope to see some pictures or videos of what you've built. Thanks and God bless.